intense and evil winds that flow out of the sky windmill of time. You like that, huh? Oh, yeah. I mean, before we get any further into this thing, I have to warn any of you out there, science and fashion and sport and everything else is all sort of getting combined today. I mean, after all, you have guys that study the musculature of the human frame who turn out to be relief pitchers. And they, oh, yes, very serious. You don't just get out and rear back and thrum that ball no more. I mean, everything has to be very scientifically explained and studied. And so as a word of warning, I'd have to come right on record here as telling you that any of you people who are wearing these rugby shirts, you better be careful. You know what a rugby shirt is. It's a big new style. And you got to be careful because you may get yourself bashed in the mouth. You may get yourself you may get a mouthful of knuckles if you're not careful, buddy. And I'll tell you why. Because, I got a couple of these rugby shirts and Montgomery Ward specials. And the other night I'm at this cocktail party and I'm wearing one of these rugby shirts and I walking around and eating the hors d'oeuvres and trying to look like I belong at the party. See, when all of a sudden this guy with a great set of mutton chops and a salt and pepper mustache of the RAF variety and wearing this Savile Row suit comes over to me, and I figured he just wants to say hello, and he walks up and goes, "Sir, excuse me." And I said, "Yes, sir." A gentleman of great dignity. He says, "But that shirt you're wearing, sir." And I said, "Yes." He says, "By George, the Westminster Blues." I said, "The what?" "You're wearing the colors of the Westminster Blues." I says, I'm wearing a rugby shirt. I got it at Montgomery Ward's." "By gad, sir, you have no right to wear that shirt." And I says, I bought it. It's, it's 1995. "That's the color of the Westminster Blues, and you have no right to wear that shirt, sir. You are not a member of that team." So, excuse me, I'll be right back. And I scurried around the hors d'oeuvre table, and I went back and hid in the men's room, see. I waited till the party was over before I came out because he was going to hit me with his bumbershoot. Now, all I got to say, friends, is when you're wearing your rugby shirt, you better be careful where you wear it. In fact, a friend of mine the other day got into trouble wearing one of these things. He was wearing the colors of the New Zealand Blacks. Now, apparently the New Zealand Blacks are a very controversial team. It's like going out and wearing a shirt of the Philadelphia Flyers. It's a fist-fighting, mean, ugly team. And there he was. He was wearing the New Zealand Blacks. The guy came up to him and gave him a shot in the ribs. And by God, you gentlemen play a game that isn't a gentleman's game. He gave him a shot right out of the kidney. He said, "Oh, what do you do? Stop that thing that seems right. May I have a million times? Stop to refuse. All right, sir, line to the sound. Upon my radio. In cavalry and down that old Volgo go ahead. That old brain is right to stop, please. What do you do? Okay. Just thought once in a while you got to show the colors. And, let them know. I wonder how many people, really seriously, I wonder how many people just don't realize these are very, very highly honored and very serious colors when you're wearing one of these rugby shirts. You know what this one is here, by the way? This is the shirt, the official color of the Leeds team I'm wearing right now. You see, it's like walking around town wearing a New York Yankees shirt. It says on the back, Roy White. You got, people say, well, are you Roy White? And well, no. See, ignorance can lead you into some awful bad scenes. And, of course, the British and the Empire, and what was the Empire, the Commonwealth, is very, very symbol conscious. We use symbols as decor. But the British are very symbol conscious. So the old school tie means that you do not go around wearing a tie that is the colors of, let's say, Cambridge. You simply don't unless you went there. And if you didn't go there and you're wearing a Cambridge tie, buddy, that is like the worst social boo-boo you can make. Oh, yeah. And everybody is, going around wearing Princeton T-shirts now, and they're wearing Rutgers T-shirts and stuff. And half these guys that are wearing these things never even got through 7th grade. Now, it's the truth. Well, symbols are very important. And so tonight, speaking of symbols, friends, we'd like to salute an artist who has made since this is a bicentennial year, we have to talk about, bicentennial things once in a while. After all, I think we concentrate too much on the Revolutionary period, the Thomas Jefferson period. A lot of stuff happened, from that time on. And it's all part of America's past 200-year history, sure. And I'd like to salute an artist who is working in that department in Salem, Oregon. And now an artist, what is an artist? He's supposed to interpret his world around him. And in a very real sense, he's supposed to preserve it so that 100 years from now, 200 years from now, people who have no knowledge of our time can go back and look at the work of an artist, and he says, oh, look at that. That's the way a train looked, magnificent. Look at that. There's a kitchen. And isn't that just quick? If you ever seen the Dutch school of painting of, Howells and Vermeer, you look at these and they have these great Dutch interiors a couple hundred years ago, and you see this peasant lady peeling potatoes, and you see just what their life was like, see? And and the artist should do this. Not all artists, but many artists should. And here is a man in Salem, Oregon. We have to salute Bernard Eubanks, 81, who was an artist. And what he does, he renders absolutely beautiful, accurate drawings of great American outhouses. Well, now, wait a minute. That was an important part of the landscape. and yes, great. And did you know that the outhouse, I had no idea. I did not realize that the outhouse achieved great architectural distinction at one point. When you think of an outhouse, you always think of this little shed in the back of the barn. No way. Let's face it, if you had a magnificent 27-room estate somewhere, you had to have an outhouse. That's just the way it was. So what did you have? See, you didn't put a little shack up back. Oh, no. In fact, look at this magnificent. Here's a drawing. One of his drawings is a magnificent outhouse. It looks like a Chinese pagoda. See, these are actual outhouses that he's drawing. He didn't invent them. This is a magnificent outhouse. And this particular outhouse is a sketch of one that a very rich Colorado prospector had built behind his very rich house outside of Denver. He hid it big, say, with the gold. So he's got an outhouse, I'll tell you. It looks like a cross between Lincoln Center with just a little touch of the Grand Hall of the People at Shanghai. So he had a lot of Oriental influence there. And so he says, this artist, he does all these great buildings, but primarily outhouses. His first love as an artist is outhouses. And he's sketching these outhouses, and they're becoming part, of exhibitions, Smithsonian Institution and all that. His eyes light up, says, when you discuss outhouses. He says, I sell my other stuff just to keep me in work with my real art. says, nobody buys my paintings and drawings of outhouses. He says, I'm doing it for art's sake, for posterity. So I just do all this other horses and mountains and stuff, or, the general Slav art fan. He says, do you realize that these outhouses played a major role in the settling of the West? Yes, that would be a major role. You have to concede that. Mr. Whipple would have liked to have seen a few of these great outhouses, and he says that the first thing the settler did, no matter where he went, was to build a privy. And after that, he went on and built the cabin or the house or whatever, went and cleared the land. But the first thing he built was this privy, and often the privy set the style for the house he was to build later. You see, because the privy came first. So he says, no, some of them are very lavish. In fact, there's a picture of this lavish one. He says, a miner in Colorado struck it rich and had his outhouse done in the same architecture as his resplendent home. Touches of Oriental elegance and opulence, a little Byzantine here and there, a little Baroque. And he says, in fact, he says, here, he takes another painting down. I wish I had this one. He says, there's one in Montana that was magnificently carpeted with Oriental rugs. And it had a porcelain Dutch imported heating stove in it. The kind with the little blue windmills all over it. He says, very elegant. And he said, so I would just like to salute the American artist there. I mean, he has to, we're putting this down for the record that there was one guy that was interested in it. And by the way, speaking of American art, we have a note here from one of our listener types, the kids. He says, Shepard, you must have listened to the radio when you were a kid. And what did you listen to? I have to clear up a misconception. I was not a radio fan as a kid. In fact, I rarely listened to the radio. No, that's right. I was a radio equipment freak. That's a very different thing. You understand that many hi-fi people can't stand music. Yes, oh yes. The idea of building the perfect amplifier and running through it a perfect test tone and getting a perfect picture on the scope with absolutely no distortion doesn't have anything to do with listening to the Firebird suite. In short, you can be hung on equipment and have no interest whatsoever in what the equipment actually does. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you can build great model ships, but that does not mean that you're a whaler. I mean, and so I was really into equipment. And how this came about, well, we will tell you the sickening story. Immediately following this station break, which is WOR New York, one of the great pioneer stations in the world, already a 3-letter call, WOR New York. It's one of the old great calls in American radio history. Now, there are a lot of radio stations that have come on, since WOR first went on the air. In fact, trillions. But there are great stations all over the country that stand like, you might say, the monuments in the radio world. WLW, right? Cincinnati. WGN, Chicago, right? KDKA, WOR, New York. These are all the great behemoths. In fact, they were the people who settled the West. You might say they populated the kilocycles, right? And the first thing they built was the privy. This is WOR New York, and let's play some of these goodies on them. Previews now. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue opens May 4th. No, that's English, isn't it? Boy, what does Hail to the Chief go like? It's on the tip of my tongue. Hail to the Chief. How does it go? No. No. Can't remember how Hail to the Chief. They don't play it often when I show up. I haven't heard it some time. It's been some time. Yes, I think we get that occasionally. How does it go now? Let's see. That's maddening. Hail to the Chief. How does it go? Let's see. No, come on. Don't play. That's the John Gambling theme. Sorry. That has been Hail to the Chief. Well, of course, you can see the point there. But how does it go? It goes, let's see. I'm trying to picture, a president going up on the stand there, and no, that's something else. I'm figuring around the flagpole. No, that's not it. Yes, it's no, that's not it. No, I'm sorry. We give up there. Okay, we got to get back here. You see, the minute we start doing a show, everybody gets nervous around here because this is the reason we're here. Sometimes I feel like a giant walking J.C. Whitney catalog. Unbelievable. Hey, wait till they work. They're working on a new technique to be able to play 7, 8 commercials at once. Yeah, they are. And they'll all be sent out at different frequencies. Yes, and so they call that super packing. And so in 1 minute you can get 7, 8, maybe up to 200 commercials all at once. Oh, it's fun. Yes, technology. Oh, don't worry. I know all about it. Don't let me handle the show. You handle the knobs, okay? It's still on the tip of my head. What does Hail to the Chief sound like? Let's see. No, that's the Marine Corps song. Let's see. Try another one now. That's close. No, that's the Air Corps song. Yeah. Yeah. Off we go again into the wild view. Yeah, I remember that. And now, to calm them down in the control room, they're all nervous. Why do they all have to be together? What's the matter with you guys? Now, that's enough of that. But all right, we have just a few moments here. We can try to sneak in a little show here. You don't mind? You have any more you want to play? I mean, some that's left over from other programs, or stuff that might come on. We'll play it anyway in case they want to come on. Anything like that, huh? Okay. I guess. All jesting aside, though, I have to pick up the this the philosophical question. This kid, you must have. Now, I have to clear up a conception. At no point in my life was I a radio fan. No way. In fact, nobody in my family, except my mother, and she wasn't a radio fan. She had this radio, this AC/DC radio, Knights with a K, and it had this white plastic cabinet. It was the kind that sat up on top of the refrigerator. Yeah, it was and it had a crack in it. And she used to periodically replace the adhesive tape that held it together. It had a fantastic hum. And she would have that on when she was doing the dishes, and you could hear Bing Crosby always sing. He was always singing something called "Sweet Leilani, Heavenly Flower." And it would be humming away there. That was the only radio that went on in our house. And so if you come to me and ask me whatever Fred Allen said, I couldn't tell you. Because I was out knocking fly balls at the time. We're playing pool. So I was not a radio fan. I'll tell you this, though. I got to be a radio equipment freak. And to this day, I remain that. Very much so. And I'll tell you how it happened. My old man was a radio equipment freak. I think any psychologist that listening, they're always talking about sexual overtones, the Freudian stuff and so on. You always say you must have had a trauma. But there are a lot of things that affect a kid that have nothing to do with any of this. Just seeing somebody do something very exotic, and you're really knocked out. And as a kid, my old man, I can remember scenes when I'd come home, I'd be like 5 or 6 or 8 or something like that. And the old man, he believed that he knew about radio. Technical. See, not radio programs. I must repeat, there's a difference. Today, people hardly pay any attention to their radio. They turn it on, that's it. But he really thought he knew about equipment. And like all freaks of any period in history, he had to get the best. So if you're a car freak, even though you're barely eating, you tend to buy a Jaguar. It's a thing. And if you're a stamp freak, even though you haven't been able to pay your rent, you go out and buy this rare stamp if you get a chance to see that. That's true freakism. You just give up everything just for this thing. Well, he bought this radio, and his life centered around that radio when he wasn't out bowling. He was a great bowler. But this radio, he did not listen to this radio. In other words, he didn't come in and turn it on and hear Fibber McGee. Oh, no. He had an E.H. Scott all-wave DX23. I remember even the name of it. It was an E.H. Scott all-wave DX23. Man, it had 23 tubes in it. And it was some radio, I want to tell you. It was fantastic. We had an iron that must have been 500 years old. It was always blowing up on my mother, but we had the greatest radio in the history of the Western world. And the whole house, nobody was allowed to touch it. In fact, there was an absolute standing rule. Get away from the radio. Don't get near it. And it had a tremendous cabinet. It was hand-carved walnut cabinet. It was one of these big, they called it a high boy. What's the matter? God, you're writing in there today. And it had sliding doors. You'd slide the doors back, and there were knobs all over it, and it had a great big airplane dial. It had about 15 different scales on it. It said 19 meters. And it had little red blotches where the 19 meters would, it had little tiny lights that would light up and say Warsaw. And stuff like Czechoslovakia. And all marked on a dial. So it had police frequencies and aircraft and all that stuff. And it was fantastic. Well, the old man used to take the radio out, come home, see, and I never was allowed to get near the radio, except that I knew this radio was like, if you're an 8-year-old kid, you're not allowed to jump into the Ferrari, put your feet up on the dashboard. No way. And so nobody could touch the radio. But once, like every month, the old man would take the radio out of the cabinet. It slid out. It had a chassis, a big chassis. And he would slide it out of the cabinet, unplug the speakers and all the stuff in the back. It had these big plugs. He'd take it out, and he would very carefully, and everybody had to stand back, like the parting of the Red Sea. He had to stand back while he carried it in to the kitchen at this white kitchen table. One of these enameled kind, with the chips on it and all. And he would very carefully put down papers and everything, and he would lower the chassis onto the table. Now, what would he do with it? See, nothing was wrong. The radio was playing great, but what would he do with it? Well, he would carefully take off all the tube shields and lay them out in the line, see? So they went back on the right tube sockets, and he'd take out each tube. It had 6 C5s. It had 6 SJ7s. It had all these great things. And he'd polish every tube, see, because he had this theory that if dust got on the tube, the tube, and he was actually right, that it would run hotter, you see, because it would not radiate the heat right. So he polished the tube, and he put it all in a row. He had all these tubes all laid out, and he had a big can of carbon tet with a brush, and he would very carefully then turn the radio over, and he would very carefully, with carbon tetrachloride, he'd carefully clean all the band switching contacts. They had this big band switching to switch from various coils, and he'd carefully clean all the carbon tet. With the carbon tet, he'd clean all these things. And me and my kid brother, would stand at back, at a distance and watch him do this. Because he said, no, don't get near it. Don't get near it. He says, you're liable to knock the chassis over. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. And he carefully cleaned the waveband contacts, and then he would go over all the connections. It was all solder connections. He would go over all the connections and very carefully clean it. He would clean out the tube sockets and everything. Then he'd take it over on the top, say, and he had one of these little jeweler bulbs, like with a little nozzle that came out as it blows air, and he'd go. Every grain of dust off the chassis. It was sparkling. Then he would say, okay, now, he's had this for about 3 hours during his radio repair night. Everything is done for that night. You can't even come in the kitchen, see. Then he would very carefully carry it back and slide it into the cabinet and plug it in, and then he'd turn it on. Of course, he's cleaned all the pilot lights in there, and the dial lights up. He'd say, wow, listen to that. Now it's really working again. It's working great. Of course, you couldn't tell any difference, see. But he figured he could really hear the difference. He tunes around. Now, what did he actually listen to? Well, all right, I'll tell you what he'd listen to. You're really curious. He would listen to, for example, one of the big things he listened to every night when he would get home in time, from the office. He'd come in maybe at 5:30, 5:45, like that. He'd rush into the living room, turn on his radio to warm it up. So he'd adjust all the dials and everything, and it had a BFO on it. You see, you could hear. Yes, it had a beat frequency oscillator, and he'd tune it up, and he'd stand back, and exactly at 6 we would hear. And he loved to do this. He'd turn up the gain. You'd hear boom, and the voice would come on and say, "This is London calling. It's the BBC." That's what he listened to. He'd flip. I mean, and then he'd take out a chart. He always kept a chart, see, as to how they were coming in today, whether they were coming in louder today or not. He kept charts. And then once in a great while, when he was home in the evening, what would he listen to? Do you think he sat around and listened to Fibber McGee? Are you kidding? Oh, no. There was up around 80 meters in those days, if you know anything about the allocation of frequencies. There was a little narrow band on his receiver that was marked aircraft. And he loved to listen to this, And he'd listen. Oh, wow, that flight. He said, shh. He said, wow. And he was always listening to aircraft. Now, I don't know, whether this affects you as powerfully as it affected me. But this was such a big special. It's almost like a religion in the house. Don't touch the old man's radio. And there was a drawer in the bottom of his cabinet, in this big cabinet, and the drawer had a place in there where he kept all of his logs. He would log all this stuff in a very neat. He had it all neatly lined out: frequency, hour, time, conditions, what the weather was like the day he heard this stuff. Oh man, And from that, man, I just, it's even to this day, just as I think in my mind, as I think of an IC or I think of a transistor, there's nothing more beautiful than to see a beautifully harnessed, magnificently wired piece of equipment. All that harness, all that color-coded wiring, the magnificent resistors. So don't come and, ask me, hey, Chuck, did you ever listen to... No, you're not listening to Joel Siegel tonight, friend. This is another ball game we're playing here. In other words, let's put it this way. This could be called almost anti-kitsch, right? After all, an AD1 amplifier using push-pull parallel 6L6 is hardly a kitsch. See, ask a question, you'll liable to have an answer till it comes out of your ears. Tinky-tinky-tinky-tinky-tinky. WOR New York. Stay tuned for In Conversation.